All right. Hello, everyone. This is your health coach, Julianne. And today I get to do one of my very favorite things. We get to hear from someone who is not me, Mr. Rich Brown. Welcome, Rich.
Hi, Julianne. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So Rich and I have known each other for, let's just say, over 30 years, as he happens to be a college friend of my husband's. My husband's friend from college, go Salukis.
There you go.
And so, just to let you know, Rich spent his professional career in industrial and technical roles, and then about the last 20 years in video production. So now I know that Rich is a very active person and is also very health conscious, and that was not always true for him. So, Rich, I know we don't have a lot of time today, but can you let us know, kind of like your story, if you will, more of an abbreviated your health journey, like where
Sure.
you started out, what happened, and where you happen to be now?
Great. Sure. Um, when I was 35, I was very active, but I was frustrated in that I was putting on about a pound a year from my 20s on, and I couldn't seem to get rid of that, you know. And so that always bothered me, and I was working out in the gym and all that, and thought I was eating healthy,
Hmm.
but I really didn't know what healthy was. And one summer, I had my best friend and I were water skiing down at the lake, and he wasn't feeling well at the end of the season. We used to do it almost every weekend, and he went in and got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he was dead by the next summer.
Wow.
And so at 35, that really hit me like, what am I doing that's going to put me in that same situation? I don't want to be dead by next summer. That's, terrible. It was awful to watch him go. And so that kind of put me on a quest to figure out what I needed to do to protect myself. It was just fear of dying at that point, And it took me 6 years to figure it out, or at least to come to a conclusion as to what I needed to do. And that's a long story that involves international travel and all kinds of crazy stuff. Not that I was really obsessively looking, but I was keeping my eyes open. There was no internet at the time, so it was just talking to people. And I happened to run into a group of people in Jamaica that lived off the earth, just out of their garden. And they were extremely healthy, and they claimed to never have cancer. And so that kind of put the light bulb off, and I did a little more research and just made it a New Year's resolution that I was going to give up all meat and dairy, that I decided that there was some evidence that linked that to colon cancer and other cancers. And so I did it, and I just felt so much better. The weight started to drop off. I was at my all-time high weight at the time, 189. I dropped down to about 162 after 6 months of just not eating meat and dairy, and felt great. My allergies went away. I was sleeping better. I was working out in the gym harder. I just felt great. And at the time, my sport at the time was ski racing. And it really helped with that because I was lean and mean instead of portly. and ski racing is a strength sport. And so, but I just became obsessive with the idea of understanding how the body works. And so I spent probably 3 hours a day researching. Now the internet was out, so there was a lot of things on the internet. The first book I read was The China Study by Colin Campbell, which was a wonderful study done with cooperation with the Chinese government, with I think 225,000 people studying what they ate and then following them for 25 years and what diseases they got.
Mm-hmm.
And the book essentially came to the conclusion that the more animal products you eat, the more diseases you get. It was pretty much a linear graph. And they had groups of people that ate totally plant-based in China, and then groups of people more in the city that were eating like Americans. And so it was a perfect linear curve. The more animal products in the diet, the more diseases they got. And that book just cemented the idea in me. Number one, I was going to stick with it because I felt so good. But it also realized that, the science is behind it, at least the epidemiologic data.
May I ask you a question? I was going to
Sure.
say, now you were saying that you avoided all meat and
Yep.
dairy. And I was going to say, does that mean, because I know some people who do the same might still be eating packaged or processed foods or snack foods. Had you also just started avoiding that sort of thing?
Not at first. My girlfriend wasn't on board with it. And so at the time, there were a few fake meat products, not a lot. They're veggie burgers and fake rib. I remember the little riblet things, barbecue rib things. And so I did a lot of that because I wanted to have something that looked like meat on the plate to keep her happy, at least that was my logic. And I wasn't really in tune with all the ways you can make things and interesting dishes that are plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
But I also put an effort into that, to making good meals, complete meals, 3 or 4 course or 3 or 4 items, not just one thing. And I like to cook. And so I try to make a new recipe every week. And I've done that for 19 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's fun to experiment and learn new things and learn things that I never used to eat before that are good. And I do a lot of ethnic cooking, Mexican, Indian, Thai, all the range of spices and all those things. I just feel like I'm still, after 19 years, scratching the surface and
Mm-hmm.
learning about flavor combinations and different ingredients and spices and all that. So yeah, it's a journey. and I've gotten better and better at it.
Mm-hmm.
But to more directly answer your question, though, processed foods can be as bad as meat and dairy when it comes to health damaging effects. And so I do try to avoid most of the processed foods. I eat a little bit of it here and there, some of the fake cheeses, if I want to put cheese on an enchilada or something, that kind of stuff. But I know it's not a health food. I've come to the study of food is every item is either health enhancing or health damaging. There's really not much in between. And so I try to avoid the health damaging things. The oils are not really great, even the healthy oils, supposedly. And if you cook them, it's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I do use a little oil in cooking sometimes. You just sometimes have to, or make this salt and pepper stick to the peas or whatever, But so yeah, but trying to keep it clean. And that's my advice to people too, especially younger people. The cleaner your diet, the better. Try not to eat food from a factory. It comes in a box or went through a factory, because you look at the ingredients, there's 29 ingredients for something that should have 4 ingredients in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of these things are in there to add MSG type of excitotoxin chemicals that can cause all kinds of bad symptoms and damage to your brain.
And are really usually in there to, number one, preserve the items because they have to extend their shelf life. And number two, unfortunately, to keep people eating them, to keep them sort of
exactly
wanting
addictive.
more. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, free glutamate MSG type chemicals are addicting and make you just keep wanting to shovel it in your mouth. And
yeah, which is kind of sad when you think about it, right?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
The food companies have figured it out. It's cheap. It's a cheap way to make it taste good, and it's also addicting. And so it's a great way to sell your product. And if you try to make a clean product that doesn't have these things in it, you're going to lose, because the other guys that are putting it in are going to sell way more because people love it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to watch that, So eating clean is, to me, almost as important, in my advice, at least to younger people, than getting rid of the meat and dairy. Now, dairy I consider to be pretty much health damaging, no matter how you size it up. But you can eat clean meats, and not in excess, not every meal, but maybe once a day. And then eat clean the rest of your diet, with avoiding the processed foods and the cooked oils as much as possible, and be pretty healthy, and have a long, healthy life, and there's a lot of examples of people that have eaten crap food all their life and still live to be 90 or 100, so
yeah.
It's, but it also is quality of life. And that's kind of where I'm high on that, just because, number one, I got rid of all my allergies, which was a lifelong bothering me, just nuisance. I got rid of all my back trouble. I had lifelong back trouble. And that was going gluten-free. I don't think I ever told you that I also went gluten-free, but that was 8 years after I went plant-based. And I did it as an experiment, and my back problems went away and have never come back. I've not had a single back problem since I went gluten-free.
Yeah.
And I had serious back trouble, constant low-grade pain and just stiff, and always just, when I get up, it was hard to straighten up, and, low-grade pain.
And
But
that
then
that actually shifted when you went gluten-free. Is that what you're saying?
Gluten-free, it was something to do with irritation of the digestive system, which is right next to your lower back, and that irritation was getting into the lower back and causing problems. I had a herniated disc too from motorcycle racing, but that was just an aggravating factor, but it wasn't the real sharp pain that I used to get that would put me in bed like once every 5 weeks or so, ruin vacations, ruin ski races. And it was, you never know when it was going to come, just for no explained reason.
Yeah.
You'd been over to tie your shoe, and all of a sudden you couldn't straighten up, and it was like somebody stuck a knife in your back. I mean, it was awful. And that was regular. Never again since I went gluten-free. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But
it actually does make sense. It has a lot to do with inflammation too. So,
right.
But
I mean, it was so frustrating to me that I'd been to doctors about my allergies and went through all the tests and all that. And I'd been to doctors about my back, and they wanted to do surgery, and the other doctors wanted to root my sinuses. And, I never did any of that, fortunately, because I didn't need to, apparently.
Yeah.
But I never got a straight answer from any doctor that, hey, let's take a look at what you're eating or try this,
Yeah.
It's just not our medical community, unfortunately, is set on not blaming anything on the diet. And it's pretty obvious that way when you go into the hospital and see the crap that they feed people.
Oh, that is amazing, isn't it? The hospital food, it's like, ooh,
oh my gosh,
a little bit of a disconnect here. Right?
Yeah, they don't want to have any correlation between what you eat and why you're in the hospital.
Yeah.
But I've seen statistics, at least some doctors or somebody put out a thing saying that 85% of what people walk into the hospital for is to do with what they've eaten.
Right.
And
well,
that's huge. That's
and
huge.
I mean, conventional medicine, it is what it is, right? You could say a lot of things about it. And one thing that I am highly encouraged by is, first of all, that people are having these kinds of conversations.
Right.
And I mean, we're not unqualified to learn about how to take care of our bodies, right? It's like we don't need a medical degree to figure out what is helping us
right.
by doing that simple elimination thing. But I think nowadays you see more and more functional medicine coming into the scene. And of course, hello, person in the background. And of course, functional medicine is more about finding out what is at the bottom of these symptoms that we are having, not just treating the symptoms, which is what conventional medicine is usually doing, treating symptoms rather than addressing the underlying problem. So I will just have a little shout out to my functional medicine doctor friends out there.
Exactly.
For that. So I'm encouraged about that. Anyway, now, are there any, was there anything else you want to say about that? Or can I ask you, is there anyone you've met who really motivates you to continue on your health journey?
There is one that really stands out. And I was a member of the Cincinnati Ski Club since I came here to Cincinnati. And so I've been a member for 30 some years. And the guy that founded our ski club in 1950, he and two other guys, was not active in the club when I joined. He was older. But I finally did meet him and heard his story that he had got stage 4 colorectal cancer at the age of 69. This was 30 years ago. And decided to change his diet instead of going through the chemo and radiation that they wanted him to go through. And they had given him 3 months to live. And so it was pretty serious. It had spread, and it was a big tumor. And he went on a macrobiotic diet, which back then they weren't calling it plant-based or vegan or anything like that. It was before those times, really. But he had a book that talked about macrobiotic diet healing cancer, and that's what he did. Very clean food, fish once a week is what was written back then, and he did that. But the tumor shrunk, the metastasis went away, and to this day, 30 years later, he's been cancer-free and healthy. In fact, in those 30 years since he changed his diet, he has not been to the doctor, and he's now 101 years old.
Oh my gosh.
He's had no reason to go to the doctor.
Oh my gosh.
for 30, between the age of 69 and or 70 and 70 or 101 now.
Wow.
And he's been running marathons in his later years, and he's got 6 world records in the marathon and half marathon for his age groups in the 80s and 90s. And still running at 101, 5 miles 3 times a week. Plus he does marathon canoe racing. So he goes out and practices with his canoe and does 5 miles around the lake or something.
Uh-huh.
And drives at night in the rain, he says,
Oh, wow.
Sharp attack. He's a little hard of hering at this point.
Yeah.
That's his
Yeah.
only issue,
Oh my gosh.
And so I look at this guy and I'm like, my gosh, I got 35 more good years, because I'm following the same diet he is, and with no doctors, and that's really nice to lolook forward to at my age, after being 2 years retired already. So
oh, that's great. Yeah, they say, I like this. What I'm hearing nowadays is, you made reference to it, having quality of life, as we age, and so important. And what I'm hearing nowadays is a phrase called health span, not just lifespan. So none of us, getting to 101, well, that sounds okay for most people, but yet none of us really want to do that if we're not healthy the last several years of our lives, right? So we want to make sure our health span and our lifespan kind of coincide, right?
Yeah, and it's, all my friends that I hang with are much younger because the friends my age can't hang with what I do. The ski racing, the sport bike riding, the tennis, the golf, all that stuff. They're just, they're even having hip replacements, knee replacements, they're overweight, they don't feel well, they don't have any energy. And so it's frustrating to see that. And they don't want to hear to give up their meat or dairy,
Yeah.
I just try to set a good example. I don't preach as much anymore as I used to, but just try to live by example, and maybe someday they'll get tired of being tired and sick. And
well, here you are.
Yeah,
telling your story. Hopefully
just trying to set the good example. Yeah.
Hopefully inspiring some people to check in with maybe what they're eating and how that relates to everything about their lives. Seriously.
Right.
So
that fellow's name is Mike Fremont. He's all over YouTube. There's some interviews with him on there, and he's gets interviewed every time he runs a half marathon anymore at one. So
yeah, it's good to hear people's stories, because you can find all kinds of things where they're trying to sell you something, or especially my least favorite thing to see is the answer is in this pill, the answer is in this supplement.
Exactly. There's a lot of doctors. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you folks, it's not.
Yeah. They have a good argument for something, and then they're selling you this pill to fix it all,
Oh yeah, the long form commercials, basically, where at the very end you have to wade through the whole thing, and at the very end, buy this 3 easy payments of, Anyway, we're not doing that today. That's why I love hearing when I come across people, when I know that they have a story to tell. I love hearing about it, because that's really what it's all about, right? Sharing with one another. It's
experience, people's experiences. And I've been around enough, and I say I got obsessive about studying and learning everything I could learn about how the body works, and any study that was been done that has diet's effect on health, or what causes this disease, what causes that disease. And so pretty well, I can't say I've figured it all out. There's people that know more than I do, for sure.
Well, they're finding out more things too. So I love that.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I have some opinions, diabetes, you can make that go away in 2 weeks, but the doctors tell people that? No,
Well, a lot of people I know have actually experienced, especially if the doctor had said, even my clients had said, you're pre-diabetic, you've got signs of insulin resistance, therefore, we're going to be watching it, kind of a thing, before I put you on the metformin or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And
it's awful.
Yeah, and that's when they get, it becomes very real for them. And that's oftentimes, unfortunately, when I get the phone call, when it's gotten to a point where they're like, ooh, red flag alert. So anyway, but yeah, I don't mean to, be throwing, physicians under the bus, but I really just think it's so important, as for people to just pay more attention to, you are the master and commander of your own health, right?
Yep, exactly. And
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've learned. The lesson is you're responsible for your own health. And if you want to rely on the health system to keep you healthy through your life, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. I was just thinking that.
They're bound by their standards of care, which are written pretty much by the pharmaceutical companies, as to what doctors are allowed to offer for treatment or advice even. And it's all twisted by the big money, and you're not going to get good advice. And, there's some things doctors do that are good, that are the best option for a certain problem.
Yeah.
But the higher percentage of them, diet change is the best option for most things that ail people. And, it's not very well known or publicized. Unfortunately, it's suppressed in any way it can be.
Yeah. So, well, I think people just get a little upset because they don't realize that just even changing, like you made a big change, and you saw it when your friends literally dying, and that had a huge, and you wisely did not wait until it was you experiencing all of that,
Exactly. I'm glad of that. Right.
Yeah. But you were wisely watched. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people with a similar story to me that, they've had a life-threatening condition. They had a heart attack or they had cancer or whatever. And they realized that changing their diet was the right way to go, and made the change and stuck with it. But there's an awful lot of people out there like that too. But and it always amazes me that I did it, because, and I look back on it and I say that this is the best thing I ever did for myself, just because my quality of life now and energy and the things that I do, I couldn't do if I was eating a standard diet. I'd be out of shape, or already had my first heart attack or whatever, You
might be, that might very well be true. And I hate to say that, but anyway, I was going to mention though, I mean, and when people are listening to this and like, oh, well, that guy made he had a big friend go through a big crisis, and then he made a huge change, and then he voraciously looked all this stuff up, pre-internet, and I will point out to our audience that you really don't have to go through some huge life-changing thing to make some immeasurable, noticeable improvement in your health. You can start with just one small thing, and then it kind of tends to build. If you just made like two small changes in your lifetime, over the course of a year, just think about where you'd end up, right, in 12 months.
Sure.
So
it's
anyway,
better to head it off before it happens.
And you don't have to take it on all at once,
It was, I think it's, 50% of people don't survive their first heart attack. So how long are you going to wait? You've been clogging up the arteries all your life. I ate McDonald's when I was a kid. I ate McDonald's all through my 20s, and was eating fast food through my 30s until I made this change. So, our generation is worse off than our parents just from that respect, because
if you look at it
we
like
were
that,
crappy food in our younger years, more so than our parents were. So you gotta head it off before it kills you.
Well, before we conclude here, and I really appreciate your time. I love hearing about how people, have made positive changes with their health like that. Any doctors, just real quickly, just the top 3, let's say, doctors you might recommend following for advice or to improve someone's health or wellness?
Yes. I'm going to give you a list of several of them that will be in the YouTube comments below. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
But three that stand out real quick is Colin Campbell, the guy that wrote the China study book. He runs a website and an organization called Forks Over Knives. It's a great website, tons of recipes, all kinds of things on there. John McDougall is another one, johnmcdougall.com. Great doctor with tons of stories of people healing all kinds of diseases by going on a plant-based diet. And Caldwell B. Estleton, he wrote a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And if you've got any kind of heart issues, or have had a heart attack, or have had stents, or on statins and want to get off them, it's a great book to read.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I'll link those below. Yeah.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so
Be
much.
wary of,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
be wary of doctors that are selling a pill to solve everything. Those are the ones that,
Yeah.
you know,
Or
those guys,
anyone.
I've been following those guys since I started this, and they're, older retired doctors. They're not in danger of losing their license if they say the wrong things. And so that's where you get the good, honest information from the old retired or near retired doctors
Oh,
that have figured it out. But, the younger doctors can't say anything because they'll be,
afraid of getting sued or
they'll get,
whatever.
well,
Yeah.
they get, yeah, and one way or another, they'll make them so they don't make money, or they'll take their license away, or they do all kinds of crazy things to
Mhm.
keep doctors in line from going off on alternative sources. So
It does
yeah,
make you wonder sometimes, doesn't it? Anyway, but that's
yeah,
just the key, right? Just question, when something doesn't sound right, you have every right to question it.
right.
You have every right to ask your doctor questions,
Sure. Well,
obviously.
I always get a second opinion from a naturopath or a health coach, or somebody that's done some research, or do your own. Nowadays, there's so much out there to research. You can find
Mhm.
things
Yeah,
that are great.
that's a good idea. But yeah, I just love this. I love everything we've talked about. Thank you so much for sharing your
Good.
story.
Thanks for having me,
And
Juliana. It's nice to see you. And
yeah, and I just want to say thank you to our audience for watching. Until next time.